Hi everybody, this is Gavin and I am the British Bookworm. So today I'm going to do a review on the last book that I've read, or I'm currently finishing off I should say. It's called The Ellipsis Manual, Analysis and Engineering of Human Behaviour by Hughes. So this book is very interesting. For those who want to know a bit more about Hughes, I would recommend him seeing him in action, watching him on the Behaviour panel, which he does with 3 other experts on the YouTube channel, which is extremely interesting, fascinating, and just on it's nearly everyone is absolutely awesome to watch. To see 4 experts in their field break down body language and interrogation techniques. So this book is it's about monitoring other people's behaviour through their body language, but also clandestine methods of manipulation. The main thought that I have reading it is its applications, and so that's the only issue that I have with it is its applications. So it discusses it's kind of based around behavioural engineering, and I would say when you set in a setting like a interrogation interview, or a setting where you are boxed off with a person who you have natural authority over, such as an police investigator or a detective on a criminal a criminal enterprise like a serial killer or something. You've got the suspect or a potential person who may have been involved in that crime. Then it automatically sets you up in a better default position to apply the techniques therein. And I know that there is numerous techniques in interrogation, and why this is more applicable is, well, I'm saying that. So this is meant to be more applicable to a daily usage, from job interviews to interacting with your lover and friends and manipulating people, potentially bad, but more positively towards a better relationship, I'd say, is a fair summarisation. Hughes is a wonderful bloke. I mean, I think he's a bit of a killer secretly, even though he has a wonderful smile. I think he utilises the techniques therein and everything else he knows to come across as quite gentle. And when you watch him on the Behaviour panel, I think it comes across that he's a lovely bloke, but at the same time, I think that he's a killer. And I don't mean literally a killer, because I don't know enough about his military background, but I mean that you can tell that he keeps his cards close to his chest, as we say, and I think that he really is a master at this, but which makes you a killer in the sense of being able to apply techniques of manipulation, not that you are actually killing people literally. But the biggest problem I have though is when you're not in that interrogation setting, I don't know how much this can be applied. So if I meet someone as a cashier, a couple of things, I'm sure you can apply it. I'm sure you can apply the techniques therein, if you really play and study as Chase discusses in this book. So the techniques therein are originating from neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, CIA interrogation techniques, and other angles of human interaction skills and body language. So they've applied the techniques in a way that is kind of like a pattern of ability to train people to a high level in a short space of time. I think that would be a fair explanation. So they've got a table of body language and what's the word? When you're lying. I'm trying to think. So you basically, when deception scales. So you've got deception scales and a table, and it basically puts it together so an operative can learn how to bring it together in a fashion that's quick to learn. So when they're in an interrogation setting, when people do certain movements together within a response to a question, which is a key thing there, the response to a emotional stimuli, that implies something from a baseline. So the baseline is when the person is monitored under normal pressure of daily communication, you know, operating in a normal environment where you may, if you were a spy on the wall, you could operate watching someone's behaviour for an hour, and then when you then bring them into interrogation the next day, you can see that the behaviour is changing under pressure, and there's a pressure caused by a key question or a key insinuation, which then brings about body language changes, which indicates that there is an area that needs to be further pushed in to get to the truth. Are you the killer, or aren't you? Have you been involved in this person going missing, etc.? And so, while it is common sense that we often use the term common sense in these arts and psychology, and my friend who put me onto this book put it in a summary that everybody does it to a degree. This guy's talking about mastering the absolute techniques, so understanding key body movements and what they often mean to the majority of the population, and applying certain language and manipulations of language in a given sentence, or manipulating a person's processing in a way that influences the parts of their brain active to have a desired response or outcome. So while I really rate the book, and I really rate not only Chase Hughes but the rest of the Behaviour panel, I do think that unless you're willing to get, like he says, a journal, and you dedicate 3 months to studying these techniques and applying them in your relationships, in your work settings, then reading it as he says is going to do you no good. If you read it without the intention of practicing the techniques in it, then it's going to do you no good. So when I say that, would I say read the book? I would read the book. I would promote the book because I think that it's a very positive book in certain, in certain aspects. It's a very positive book because it's basically promoting relationship building. Because interrogation, when we by definition discuss interrogation, we automatically use the term interrogation to mean someone having their nails pulled out, to being electrocuted. Tell me what you mean. Tell me the truth. Tell me what time the bomb's gonna go off. Type of thing. But I can remember watching a documentary, and I'm sure all these kind of people like Chase Hughes are well rehearsed in the history of this guy. But there's a man who was considered the most effective interrogator in history, and it was in World War II. I forget his name, Maybe you can tell me down below if you remember his name. And basically, he could get more information out of German prisoners than anybody else. And when they looked at his techniques, it was quite simple. He was very nice to them. He would take them on a little walk in the park so that they associated him with a nice experience, and they opened up to him rather than being locked in a cell and actually treated maliciously or vindictively. So this man got more information out than everybody else, I think, if I'm right, in World War II, by just being very polite and nice and building up over a course of days or periods of visits with each person. Rapport, friendship, respect. That's exactly what this technique is about. If you start an interview, an interrogation, or a job interview off on a bad start, then you've lost probably already. And you're not gonna build rapport up if you lose it at the beginning, or it's going to be very difficult to build rapport up if you've already sort of stumbled into an job interview, which I did, and I got the job, ironically, but only because I was known before the interview to some degree. So if you apply the techniques, it's like, right, one of the things that stood out to me, there was a lot of things that stood out to me, but one of the things that stood out to me about the Ellipsis Manual was that if you aren't congruent in yourself, then you won't be congruent in your interrogation. And I thought that was really, really profound, because I've always felt like that myself and questioned, if you don't have your nails trimmed, your hair proper, you don't treat yourself authentically, then other people are. And as he says, it passes on a subliminal level. He uses the fairly common example, metaphor of a piano key going off in a room with other pianos, and that the note harmonizes with the other C chords and vibrates in the other pianos slightly, and that we all vibrate. Now, I do 100% believe that on a deep level. So I recommend the Ellipsis Manual for all of you, because it is a book that will allow you to see the deeper elements of human connection and relationships, because there's a subliminal war always at work within us when we contact and interact with each other, that we try to sort of gloss over or pretend doesn't exist, but it does, 100%. And even though maybe defining it as a war would not be exactly the right description of it, it is definitely kind of a war, because one way or another we're trying to work in our environment to get something back, mostly, and we're all sort of trying to relate, and it's kind of like that kind of feel when we're interacting with people. It's like with contract, draw in type thing. It's always kind of like that, and we're weighing each other up all the time. The thing that didn't shock me, but it was an intriguing thing, MK Ultra, he discusses the mind control programs at the end in the government, the American government, and I'm sure the Russian governments and other governments have applied techniques where it's trying to manipulate people into being the perfect assassin, basically. What's amazing about the book, I don't know why I say it's amazing, because I believed it was real, but when you find out from someone like Hughes that it's real, then you have an authority figure who says these things happened. Now, obviously, he uses the term, because he's mainstream, he uses the term like it's opened up conspiracy theories by certain people from the 60s, 50s, 60s, coming out and testifying to MK Ultra, mind control. But he kind of classes conspiracy theories, and I'm guessing he's leading on saying that the people who've come out and saying they were in sex cults or things like that may have been conspiracy theories. I tend to lose respect a bit when anyone uses the term conspiracy theory, because that is linguistics in its maximum level of manipulation. When you use conspiracy theory, it's a term by itself that is conspiring to create a direction of manipulating the person's opinion on another person, a person's reality. That's not to say that some period. That is not to say that there is a lot of crackpot ideas about a lot of things out there, and that people do come up with absolute nonsense on a lot of issues, certainly down paths of government conspiring to do things and that type of thing. What I will say, though, to finish off, reading this, I'm going to give him a 4 out of 5. I'm not giving him a 5 out of 5 because while it's very well written, it's very easy to read. It's a very nice book. It's got content in it which will help you. Certainly the body language deciphering at the beginning is very useful, and I highly recommend the needs model. I think that understanding that on a deep level, I actually want to do what he says and sort of get a logbook and actually start practicing these techniques on my day-to-day life. But like everything, when you have all these ideas, it's very difficult to say, I'm going to dedicate 3 months of my life to studying this when I have a lot of other things going on, as everybody has. To finish off though, in reading all this, it comes at a time where the last few years have really questioned social manipulations by those that have positions that allow them to manipulate the larger proportions of society. This book opens up a lot of conspiracy thoughts in regards to social manipulation, because if they have spent so many millions of pounds and so much time and so many hours and have so many experts understanding behavioralism, it opens up the facts of social control. We really do play that down, I think, because of our egos and because people just don't care and people want to be ignorant. So what am I referring to? I do believe that the majority of us are under certain influences and manipulations of control that we don't actually recognise and we see as ourselves. And that gets to the crux of the technique in this. You only get a person truly manipulated if you manipulate them when they think that they are deciding that course of action or behaviour. And that is the ultimate way of manipulating a said person or group of people. In society, we are massively being manipulated by many things, by the algorithms of social platforms like YouTube and Twitter, TikTok. We're under a massive engineering process of behavioralism that's on a level that never has existed in the entirety of human history. I'm fairly safe to say that. You would look at the World War II propaganda desires, and they wouldn't have even imagined the positions. They wouldn't have imagined the power that they have today in World War II. They couldn't have even dreamed it up. That you can literally have a mobile phone and people can be brainwashed 24/7, manipulated by little news feeds popping up on the phone when they're going on to Google to search for something. It's really prominently powerful, and it's scary. It scares me how little people are aware of it and understand it. And that's the whole point. They don't want you to be aware of it. They don't want people like Russell Brand or other people to discuss the way that this social engineering and control is being done on a large scale across the world. So this book opens up that notion, and it is quite terrifying, because before I came to read this book, I've been already going through a process of analysing linguistics and how we are brought up socially. Excuse me, I'm going to move you up to me. We are brought up socially basically to behave in certain ways and to feel certain ways and to act certain ways without realising that, is that really us? We ask ourselves, is that really me doing that? Or is it something I've been taught that I should do? Is that response my response? Or is that the response that I've been engineered to think is the correct response? You know, when someone falls over and slips, many people will laugh because they find it funny. Yet we all know that if someone like one of my best mates died falling over, but it might still not stop me from laughing at someone falling over, because that's the gut response to someone falling over on ice, let's say. But then there's that back check where we go, oh shit, that's not funny. That person may have hurt themselves. And so when we see it from a third party, someone laughing at someone falling over, we might laugh with them initially, and the other person who witnesses the fall laughs, but we'll be like, oh, no, that's not funny. Or I might have chuckled, but it's that kind of thing that I'm on about, where basically socially we're not aware of certain manipulations. Your mummy says this, so you're brought up to not see anything else. If you're brought up with one religion and that religion tells you not to question other religions, then that again brings up an aspect or an attitude that you can be set in one way and not have. Basically, the majority of people are very set in denial to truth, because truth lands where it lands. Truth isn't your truth, which is now the new woke culture. Truth is not your truth. There is not your truth. There is a truth outside of you. And when the truth is in you, you become God. That's how I'm going to finish it. So the book, that's how I'm going to finish that point anyway. So that the book that I've just reviewed is basically a very clear indicator that the ability to manipulate not just one person in an interrogation, which is very fine art, I've got to say, if you are able to do what he claims, it's a very fine art. But I would say that it happens on a different level, in the sense of what techniques are used to manipulate society or larger society, but it's definitely at work. And whether it's intentional manipulation and your mummy's teaching you things and your daddy teaching you things as you're growing up, you still on a subpar subject, you should step out and say, oh yeah, that was wrong. He was saying that about black people, or he was saying that about Buddhists. You come out of it as you get older and you think, God, my dad was a dick. That type of thing, right? And so that might be one way to describe it. But the scary thing is that we do not address, challenge or question the larger level of social engineering. I'll give you a really good example of this, and then I'm going to go. Everybody is brainwashed in the UK for taxes. If you can question the most intellectual person about taxation and taxes, where British citizens are literally raped by the taxation system in the UK from different angles. We are taxed so badly on so many fronts, and we don't have control of whether that money goes other than through a vote every 4 years, right? where we are represented by the political system as an average. I'm not represented. I am as an individual. I'm not represented in the Westminster in London, okay, in our government system. So tax is something we all just pay and we don't question it. Fuel tax. Our fuel prices in the UK now are astronomical. Our gas and electricity is astronomically gone up now. And we just pay, but more inheritance tax, property inheritance tax, that type of thing. And they get away with it to some degree through targeting the rich and scapegoating people who are wealthy and who've been successful and probably worked harder than anybody else who's less, a lot of people who are less off, possibly. Not all the time, not in some instances, but we target people in a certain way to change the argument. The argument is the inheritance tax. If I pay, for example, if I grow up, and I need to grow up, that's for sure. But if I grow up and I buy my own house and I want my son I want to give my property that I've already been taxed through my working wage, right? I've already paid, yeah. I buy some trainers, that's got VAT on it, yeah. But I have it in the cupboard and I can give it to you or I can give it to somebody else. I don't have to be paying tax on it. I just give it. But if I have a big property, I have to pay an inheritance tax to the government. That kind of thing. And why the British population doesn't go up to the government, knock on the door and say, excuse me, we don't like this. We don't want you to do that anymore. As a whole, whether it's Labour, Conservative, we want you to stop doing that because it's absolute robbery. But the world accepts it. People accept it. Everyone's too busy in their own world. And that's another factor, time manipulation. But to finish off, the Ellipsis Manual is very interesting. It's a very, very good book. I would recommend Hughes. I think I've not checked him out individually on YouTube, but I'm very much obsessed with the behavioural panel. And I think that learning those skills is very interesting, for daily relationships and interactions. I do think it depends on our own ability to empathise and to be able to have emotional intellect and intelligence on things. The scary thing is, though, is the ability to manipulate the larger society into actions and behaviour that are immoral. And one of them would be, none of us like to think of us supporting slavery, for example, now in the modern world. But I would say you could put a strong argument that when we go to Primark, when we go to shops that sell super cheap t-shirts, because we're all struggling on our minimum wages, when we go and save our money, we're putting more into the system of control on other people elsewhere in the world. And that's not to say I'm anti-capitalist, because I'm not, but I'm just saying that we need to think a bit more about the way we operate on a day-to-day level that affects other people. And I would say one of the greatest manipulations is that my actions, my purchases don't have any impact on the rest of the world. And I don't think that anyone in today's climate could ever really truly say that and believe it. But the capitalist system, as much as I like it as well, in many ways, I think it's superior to any form of socialism or communism. I do think that we need to review that. And I think that the ability to awaken populations through the internet is never going to happen, because the powers that be control the internet. And that's the dilemma that we have. That's the dilemma of using this internet for even a video like this, because the messages that get out to the general mass of the population is controlled, because the powers that be, mainly the governments and the elite, are manipulating the overall message in the society that we live in. And that is probably the ultimate that I took from the Ellipsis Manual. when I was already questioning the entire system as it is anyway, for a long time, by the way. It's not a new thing for me. So that's my ultimate, that's what I leave ultimately for you with the review of the Ellipsis Manual. I give it 4 out of 5. I like the book. It's a very profoundly interesting book. I think that if you got very powerful at it, it would be questionable to a moral level or a moral degree to some extent. But you could also use it to change people's lives in a very positive way. The question is though, when does manipulating people become immoral? Because who are you to say what's morally better for another individual? That's the question, isn't it? But I'm going to leave that one with you. So if you like this video, give me a thumbs up and subscribe. Go out and purchase the Ellipsis Manual by Chase Hughes. Look into Chase Hughes' background, and he's a phenomenal fella. I really like Chase Hughes. I think he's got an amazing vibe. The behavioural panel, I would love to go out for a drink with the behavioural panel. I'd love to meet those guys. I think they're just like the kind of conversations you could have like for hours and hours on end. You could talk for hours, and I just absolutely would. I wish I could meet them in person. I know that you could literally know them for years and never get bored in conversation. They're phenomenal. But that's my review for today. Book Ellipsis Manual, Analyze and Engineering of Human Behaviour by Chase Hughes. Hope you've enjoyed this video. It's probably too long for YouTube. Bet nobody's got to the end. But if you have, give us a thumbs up. Bye bye.